Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns and it is such a thrill to be back with you on Sound Off Louisiana. This will be our final installment, at least for now, with regard to the Craig Mills adoption scam that we've been discussing with you over the last 4 segments now, this being the 5th one. Of course, just as with Corey Delahousse, we will certainly come back to you and update you as this thing progresses through the civil litigation that Mr. Mills has. But I think you would have to agree that going through the first 4 installments, this is one more fascinating series on an area that is just simply not being addressed in any other forum that I'm aware of. So, Mr. Mills, welcome back for this fifth edition. And let me just start out by asking you, when there is a problem with an adoption in Louisiana, who is it that investigates adoption suspicions or suspicious?
Well, based upon the Children's Code, there are guidelines that are put into the Children's Code, specifically Children's Code Section 1201, which is the adoption affidavit. It's the document that you have to sign and file with the court, and the judges look at it and make sure everything's in order. Part of the problem that we have in Louisiana is we do have laws that are based upon reasonableness and not defined areas. So the judges really have their hands tied, but if a judge has suspicion that there's something awry, they can release the information to the district attorney or to the Attorney General's office for investigation of what we talked about in the last segment of revised statute 14286. And you bring up a good item there. I had a chance to talk with a former juvenile court judge, and she was expressing to me that when she found instances of suspicion, matter of fact, I think she said there was 2 adoption agencies that were based here in Baton Rouge that presented questionable expense reports through the affidavit of 1201, and she would question them on it, and they got so perturbed with her they actually left the parish, stopped doing adoptions in the parish. So yeah, there are judges out there who are paying attention to those types of scenarios, but when she would turn that over to the DA here in East Baton Rouge, I'm not sure which DA it was, she didn't name the DA, it could have been any number of them, they would tell her that that's not their job.
Okay.
Well, specifically in 1201, which is Children's Code 1201, it specifically authorizes the release of that information for the purposes of a grand jury investigation, either by the DA or by the Attorney General's office, for a violation of revised statute 14286. And oddly enough, it also mentions that for ethical investigations, the Committee on Professional Responsibility of Louisiana Bar Association is also mentioned in here specifically. I'm not sure why that is personally, but there's 2 entities there.
Okay. And I believe in looking over some of the facts surrounding your case, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did it not appear like that it was actually relegated to the very individual herself to investigate?
No, matter of fact, no, you're exactly right. When DCFS presented their findings, I'm still unwilling to call it an investigation, but when they presented their findings to me, after I filed the Freedom of Information Act to get the information of my own complaint, one of the things that was noted in the findings was it appears from documentation reviewed by the specialist that Ms. Harrell took seriously the allegations of the Millses and tried to investigate them as best she could prior to moving forward with the baby's adoption with her clients. And apparently DCFS found no problem with an individual investigating her own activities. When it's 1201 that gives that responsibility to the district attorney or to the Attorney General. Well, and DCFS is okay with individuals who are part and parcel, in my opinion, to the activities of the adoption, doing their own investigation. I'm at a loss as to why that is okay.
And their statement in there was that, in us looking at it, we believe that she adequately attempted to.
Oh sure,
I forgot the wording.
Certainly, I'll certainly take her word for it.
Well, and that's my point. I think in any profession, I mean, I was an auctioneer for a decade, but I think if I got left in charge, if something had gone awry in one of my auctions, fortunately I'm not aware of anything that did, but if it would have, I can just imagine the auctioneer board giving the explanation that, well, Mr. Burns satisfactorily looked into this matter, and he said he said there was nothing that went wrong with this argument.
I think a lot of your viewers would really have a problem with items that they're involved in, whether it be adoption or whether it be auction or whether it be a case about getting your car fixed. Oh no, the mechanic investigated the situation. He found that there was nothing wrong. I think a lot of your viewers, if not all of them, would have an issue with can we develop a new term called self-investigation?
Oh, there you go.
So, but then again, not my words. This is public document. You can file your own FOIA and get it. These are the findings that DCFS appear to be okay with.
And this was also, well, you stumbled on the fact that there was an investigation, and then you were told, you got to do a public records request, and so then and only then did you ascertain that within that so-called investigation,
there was a sub-investigation.
There was a sub-investigation done by the very individual about whom the complaint was lodged. Okay.
Right.
Folks, sometimes, C.B. Ferguson used to be around and said, man, you can't make this stuff up. I would say this is an appropriate time for us to interject on behalf of the late C.B. Ferguson that folks, you really cannot make this stuff up.
Again, it's not my words. All I'm doing is giving you guys words of other people who are involved in these situations and letting you come to your own conclusion.
And I'll ask one other thing, and I'm sure we got the doc. Like I said, this man is one of the most organized I've ever met, but in a previous segment, we gave you the link for the findings that Ms. Harrell did not retain records for the required statutory period of 6 years. It's my understanding that she may have admitted that didn't, there's another recent incident of that involving your own case, am I correct?
Yeah, actually we asked her for all the documentation from our own home study. We are a client of hers. Her obligation to us is to maintain our records for 6 years according to her own practice act. And here's actually the original citation by the Attorney General's office where it says Ms. Paquette, which is her maiden name, Lisa Paquette, admitted to Craig Meyer, who was the assistant AG, and further admits to this board that she did not maintain fee charges and other billing information for the required 6 years. The actual statute requires all documentation from the client's interactions, including handwritten notes, all the electronic documentation, things that she would have filed on our behalf for the state police, our fingerprints. And there are so many things that go into the development of a home study. I think that information, the necessity to keep those absolute most confidential pieces of information has gotten lost in the minutia of he said, she said, or I didn't serve them, or I did serve them, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm an attorney, or I'm a social worker, or I'm a bus driver, whatever it is. The basis of the confidentiality that goes into those things. And again, it's not taken lightly. State statutes require those things to be maintained confidential. You put your trust into somebody that you don't want these things exposed, and yet you're claimed to be the alleged baby buyer. Okay, that we were alleged in the last motion that we were trying to buy a baby, and I just find it absolutely astoundingly preposterous that the solicitation to keep two siblings together would have resulted in the accusation of trying to buy a baby. Just the implications of that are so far-reaching for this industry. It's beyond comprehension as to why the individuals who write the laws for the state of Louisiana are being influenced by individuals who have already been cited. Again, these are not my words. This is all public document. You can go to the Louisiana Board of Social Work Examiners website and find this exact document. Yet, the people who write the laws are the ones who are looking to that type of individual who are making money off of adoptions.
Right.
And again, not my words. You can go to the files that we have where she said, I only accepted the normal fees for an adoption. Okay, well, normal fees, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000. you define those as normal, who's to question the normality of what you're charging?
Mm-hmm.
Gas is $5 a gallon. That's not normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's that self-investigation. It's that self-perpetuating situation where people writing laws, relying on people who can't uphold their own ethics.
Mm-hmm.
We're just in a terrible hole here in Louisiana. We're going to get it fixed.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in one instance where you tried to challenge the situation, the reaction you got back was one of how they were incredulous that you would have the nerve.
Right.
I'll let you take over.
Sure, I did. And again, not my words. I'm going to read to you the testimony, the actual transcript from a hearing that we had in Judge Hernandez's court. The defense filed a motion to seal and gag.
Yes.
And he denied that for obvious reasons. But we were accused of dragging in individuals who were on the Children's Code. Mm-hmm. And the Louisiana State lawsuit that was chartered by the Louisiana legislature back in the 30s, they govern the Children's Code Committee. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have people who are writing the laws under the Children's Code, and it wasn't us. It was our legislator, Darrell Orso at the time, Rick Edmonds, who was also there, who was the newly elected representative for our district. They're the ones that initiated the meeting. They got with Hal Levy. Hal Levy brought in the right people to talk to the legislature, their bosses, about how to change the laws. But yeah, we're accused of dragging people into meetings and talking about families that, frankly, Ms. Harrell had already exposed out to the world, but finds it to be a problem that we actually talk to people about it. So I'm going to read you the testimony. Or the transcript. For that matter, they've gone to various media agencies. They've conducted interviews on WFB. They've been to the Advocate. They've filed proceedings with both the Social Work Board, which was denied, the LADB, or the Bar Association, which was denied. They've now contacted the Department of Justice, which frankly is the individual who's chartered to investigate these types of things. They've had a meeting with their legislator where they drug in people who've actually written the Children's Code, okay? One of whom is a retired professor from LSU Law. Yeah, not my words.
Right.
Okay? And so we have 10 people in this meeting, and the author of the Children's Code, the one that Ms. Harrell is referring to in her motion, she develops her own thought about, well, yeah, there's something illegal going on. Mm-hmm. Okay. In our last segment, we talked about the various statutes that could be involved. This is just another validation from the actual individual who writes the laws that we're talking about. Right. 1186, 286. Those are the things that she's involved in, I'm assuming from Lisa's own testimony.
Right.
And she says, yeah, there's quite likely something illegal going on here. So she's then someone poses the question to her. Would you then talk to the state police? Would you go to the state police and interpret your own work product, so to speak? And she said yes, emphatically. Yes, I'll be happy to do that.
Gotcha.
Okay. So we progress through this process. We conclude the meeting. I meet with the legislators again. Rick Edmonds and I begin talking about the resolution and getting the things like that in place so we know how to change the laws. And I reach out to Ms. Magoo, again, Professor Magoo, who Lisa references in her own testimony. And I asked her, will you follow up on what you said you would do? Okay? And I'm going to, in part, here's her response. I can't give legal advice to anyone about a specific case for several reasons. But the easiest to understand is that I am not a member of the Louisiana Bar. Okay. So Robert, let me noodle this out for you. Okay? We're trying to figure out, as a family, as the Clark Mills Project, which is our nonprofit foundation, how do you correct the issues that we've been talking about?
All right.
Well, how do you do that? You involve your legislators.
Yes.
We did that. We're accused of dragging somebody in. The same person who says, yes, there's probably something illegal here. Okay? And when asked to follow up on her request to talk to state police, I can't give legal advice to anyone about a specific case for several reasons, But the easiest to understand is that I'm not a member of the Louisiana Bar. Robert, you have people here who are writing the laws for the legislature, a legal process under the Louisiana State Law Institute, chartered by the legislature, who cannot interpret their own work product.
Wow.
In what other state would you ever think that that would happen? Where you have someone writing laws who can't interpret their own work product. I'm just dumbfounded.
So, do you ultimately see the potential for there to be a legislative resolution? Is the answer going to be we can fine tune some of our statutes, maybe add specificity to limitation? Can you just tell us?
I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to provide Robert with another link to a document that was produced by the Louisiana Law School. I don't know the relationship between the Law Institute and the Law Center.
Okay.
I just don't know. But there was a very well written article in 2011 that discussed the very things that we're talking about now. Now remember, originally we talked about issues that happened way in the past, and I told you our laws have not been addressed in over 20 years.
Yeah.
2011, this article is published in the Law Journal, the LSU Law Center Journal, articulating a lot of the same things that we're talking about. So even as late as 2011, our resolution was passed in the 2016 legislative session to have the Louisiana State Law Institute look at it. There's already precedents in place, but because you have people who are writing laws that can't interpret the laws, you have individuals who are making money, again, not my words,
Yes.
making money off of adoptions, who are doing their own investigations into alleged improprieties within the adoption process. And you have people who are already found to be unethical based upon their own practices influencing the laws. Today I don't have a whole lot of confidence
I understand.
that the Louisiana State Law Institute is going to produce anything for the legislature that's going to affect change, as long as you have people involved who are making these types of statements, DCFS covering for them and allowing them to investigate themselves,
Right.
and then the Louisiana State Board of Social Work Examiners allowing people to maintain licenses and influence the process. Again, families like ours have absolutely no protection.
I think that would become apparent.
When you have people who are making money on adoptions, and I mean making tens of thousands of dollars
Yes.
on adoptions. You have solicitations. You have the coercion of, you hear statements like, I'll keep you out of jail. You're telling a social worker telling a birth mother, I'll keep you out of jail. Why would the birth mother go to jail? Why would you want to keep her out of jail? You have solicitation. You have promises that state law does not allow based upon DCFS's own policies. You have what I believe is coercion. And you have in witness testimony the fact that these things are being done for fees.
Yes.
Okay? I don't have a whole lot of confidence in today's infrastructure that we're going to get any resolution from the Louisiana State Law Institute.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we're going to give up.
Right.
We need the citizens of this great state to stand up and tell your legislators, stories like us should never, ever be told again.
Yes.
In this state. The people who are claiming to make money off of these transactions, again, not my words, you can look in our testimony. You can look in the responses to the ODC, to the Louisiana Board of Social Workers. You can look in DCFS's own findings, okay? So let me read one last thing to you here.
Sure.
All right. Specialist, and this is a DCFS employee, thoroughly reviewed all files associated with the baby's adoption and found no evidence that Lisa's clients paid any fees above what is normally paid for an agency adoption.
Okay.
Okay. there's a monetary transaction that's taking place here. We talked about the millions of dollars in income that are reported on various websites. Robert, what do you have when you are talking about soliciting through unscrupulous manners that are against state law and coercion for the exchange of another human being? Again, not my words, for the acceptance of fees. You know, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to give legal advice. But if I were to think hypothetically about this, and I were to be a defense attorney for someone that is involved in human trafficking, I would quite possibly tell the judge that's an adoption.
Yes, yes.
I mean, these are not my words. I already presented to you the solicitation that DCFS is not monitoring. I've already shown you on their websites promising mothers things that state law does not allow. Okay? And now we have the people involved in the adoption process. Again, not my words. They're accepting fees.
Yeah.
Those fees are uncapped. Is it 10,000? Is it 50,000? Is it 100,000? And in a human trafficking scenario, what is the threshold? The questions that I'm asking is, can you be trafficked for things that are only over $5,000? It's very clear in the statute. Very clear in the statute. The statute actually defines labor and services, anything that produces an economic value. What are fees? I don't know. I'm asking those questions for your audience to decide. For those people who are watching, what are fees? Are fees, again, not my words, are fees establishing an economic value for the transaction of that child?
Right.
Through solicitation, which I've already shown you, and through ways that are not allowed by state law, by promising all of your financial needs will be met. When we already discussed 286, we already discussed 1201. State law does not allow for all financial needs to be met. It's defined to some extent.
Well, and what a sad commentary what you just said about 2 minutes ago to me speaks volumes of the negative light that the adoption industry would be in, that it could be theoretically possible even for a trafficking case for the defense attorney to be able to stand up and say, no, there was no trafficking here. That's an adoption. And if I understood you correctly, that, you know, the way things are working now, that may very well be a legitimate defense.
Hypothetically, and again, I'm not an attorney, I don't give legal advice.
Right.
Hypothetically, if I were in that situation, it appears that under DCFS's watch, under law enforcement's watch, under the people who write the laws watch doing their own investigations, I think that's a plausible question to ask. So how do you resolve that? Well, you change the laws, you put caps on it, you make things that are defined so that families like ours are protected.
Yes. And in wrapping up, correct me if I'm wrong, but and I guess I can ask you to make the list, but I'm going to try to do my best of remembering all of the agencies that you have been involved with on this. We're talking about state police for sure. We're talking about the Attorney General's office,
Yes.
correct? We're talking about the District Attorney's office, at least briefly, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Sheriff's office in East Baton Rouge Parish City. I think that would lead up to the DA's office.
All right, and obviously Children and Family Services. So,
Yeah.
am I leaving anybody off? And my point is, no matter which avenue he's trying to pursue, it's always that. Well, you finish. What has it always?
It's always a different answer. It's always a different answer. They come up with their own conclusion. Like I said in the last segment, you talk to the normal person out on the street. You talk to law enforcement on the street, the people who are in the ditches, they're in the trenches, and they tell you, no, you can't do that.
Right.
And then you go to the person who actually has to do the work, and they come up with 5 different excuses as to why I'm the problem. when frankly, all I tried to do was keep a little girl and a little boy together, initially keeping a little girl out of foster care. And again, it's astounding to hear the moaning and groaning from DCFS about not having enough money. We have too many kids in foster care. I'm trying to keep kids out of foster care. And this is the kind of BS I get. Okay? I'm sorry. You don't deserve any more money. Okay?
Makes sense.
Quite frankly.
Well, in our last segment, I think you said one thing very, what I thought was captivating, and that was a statement directed at the Attorney General's office that, look, I don't mind doing your job for you, but the one thing
I'm not going to be ignored.
Exactly, and I think you would have to admit, one thing is certain, this man's not going to be ignored. I want to thank everyone for having tuned into all 5 segments of this fascinating feature that we've done. And just as I mentioned before, just like with the Corey Delahousse case, when there are significant court developments, we will be back with you. We're not just going to, I'm sure you wouldn't want it that way, just no matter what happens in his civil case, we will be back to enlighten you as to what has evolved from it. Right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern. As I said, the exceptions were denied, so the litigation will continue to commence. I think it's going to be very revealing. I think every hearing that may be held on his court case is going to be revealing. And I will be certainly there to take notes and to keep our audience up to speed. And I want to thank you once again. I know this has been 5 segments that we've done, including the one that was done a little bit, if you will, remotely at the introduction. But the level of detail that you have, I think, is unparalleled. And I guess, like I said, with that last little bombshell, you know, that which was a new development, folks, is the central situation. It's not as if this is an isolated incident. I mean, it's just not.
It's not. And when families like mine are told to go away by the very professionals who are in the industry to make these types of things happen, it becomes very disturbing for families.
Correct.
And we put together a nonprofit organization called the Clark Mills Project, Clark with an E, to help families through these situations. We'll provide counseling. We don't do the counseling, but we'll pay for the counseling for those families so that they're not separated.
Yes.
You know, through this adoption experience, we've discovered a ton of people who have impact with adoptions.
Sure.
And the failed adoptions are the ones that break families apart.
Yes.
Failed adoptions are by and large preventable.
Yes.
Preventable when you have DCFS stand up for their own policies.
Right.
You have law enforcement stand up for the alleged victims and not tell the victims that they were wrong.
Right.
When you try to resolve the issue of 4,000 kids in foster care,
yes,
you're doing what DCFS asked you to do, but you keep hearing, I need more money, I need more money, I need more money.
Yes.
When they don't stand up for the families who are trying to keep those kids out of foster care.
Yes.
You can't have it both ways.
Right.
So we feel strongly enough to keep families together, those families who have the heart to open up their house, to open up their family to someone you don't even know.
Yes.
And you get allegedly scammed in the process and have documentation, other people's words of things that are going on, we'll pay for it. We'll pay for the counseling, we'll pay for the education, and we'll pay for the lawsuits if we have to.
I don't think you can find any more heartfelt, sincere commitment than what he just said. And Mr. Mills, again, it has been an honor,
Thank you.
quite frankly, to get to visit with you on this. I hope you're successful, and I think all of our audience too would hope that you have success in reforming.
I guarantee you we will be.
You can't speak any more confidently than that. So with that, thank you once again for having tuned in for these episodes. As the court case continues to progress, we will periodically come back to you. We don't know when that won't be as predictable as has been for these, about 3 weeks we've been covering this in stages. But trust me, we're not going to drop this issue. He's certainly not going to drop it, and Sound Off Louisiana is not going to drop it. Thank you once again.